Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And yes, as I've said many times before about science fiction and taking science fiction in pop culture and turning it into tabletop role-playing fodder, that sometimes there are great premises and terrible execution. And we are going to take slices. We're going to make a meal of Rebel Moon. Yes, we're going to take Rebel Moon and a number of, as we move along, we're going to take a number of science fiction premises, whether it's television or movies, streaming, maybe some novels and graphic novels and things of that nature, and use them as fodder and fuel for our tabletop role-playing experience. Now, your particular opinion about, like, which I think we all have similar opinions about various types of science fiction that have been created. Sometimes the execution is terrible, and really horrible execution is actually good for us. Sometimes, as was mentioned in other streams, there's some science fiction that people just haven't even heard of it, let alone remember it enough to warrant it living rent-free in their head. Yeah, that's no mood. Yeah. So sometimes there are some terrible executions, and while it's living rent-free in our heads, we're like, man, we'll never get those 2.5 hours back. Whether you think you're part of that group or not, I don't know. But what I'd like to say is that that here in Rebel Moon, and using it as a backdrop, using bits and pieces of it for our science fiction fuel to tell stories. And of course, we're going to relate this to Obsidian Star, the tabletop role-playing game we will be releasing here on this channel. Having easy touchstones, for those who are not familiar with the term of touchstone, it's like it's the lazy DM, lazy DM and GM sly flourish method, where we can take something that we're familiar with without having to use too many words to describe it and go, well, in my head canon, my story is like a heist movie, and I pick that heist movie, and then I just layer over it names and NPCs, basically erasing the serial numbers, but using the same plot elements or themes or technologies or imagery and things of that nature. So yeah. Drew says, yeah, Quinn's idea is to blame that Hyperion lives rent-free in my head, and that even though I have not even read it yet. Oh, you, especially if we're on the same page, Drew. Oh, you will love Hyperion. Yeah, it is. There's a reason why the Dan Simmons sci-fi epic of Hyperion and the Hyperion Falls is it's so cherished. It's very much an Odysseus, science fiction Odysseus style thing with these people, travelers and stuff. Yeah. Shai says there are lots of shitty movies with a good setting that you can rip ideas off with impunity. Oh yeah, I mean there's right off the top of my head, I can think of quite a few that have what I consider to be an excellent premise. So what we really want to do is find something with a great premise, and that means that if you were to get the elevator pitch for whatever you watched or read, that it sounds good, and if it sounds good on paper, we want to take that and hold that close. Now, the execution of a thing, that's different. So, like, for example, because science fiction is very speculative, usually it answers the question of what if. And we're going to let's get into Rebel Moon. Some people may tune in and want to know what the hell we're talking about. We're talking about tabletop role-playing games and taking Rebel Moon and using that as a backdrop for our tabletop role-playing setting. So what are the themes? Well, spoiler alert, possibility, we're just going to take the very generalized ideas of Rebel Moon and take that into our gaming session? Well, we know, if you know any development about Rebel Moon, you will know that it is a version of, well, Star Wars, and it parallels those story elements. So we aren't too far away. We kind of go, oh, you mean that thing from 40 years ago, made until today? Yes, we're going to take a little bit of that as well. So what we have is a character that was our main character, or characters, maybe our player characters themselves. Shai says, yeah, could you explain Rebel Moon for somebody who's never seen it and will never have time to see it? Yes. So Rebel Moon, the literal title of the movie? Yes, the literal title of the streaming movie is about a rebel that has settled on a moon, and then that rebel is pulled into a larger conflict. I believe it's part 1, and it's called A Child of Fire. So our main character was a saved and raised by and trained by the greatest warriors of this galactic empire. I don't even remember the name that was given to this imperial galactic empire, hegemony, whatever you'd like to call it. This galactic empire owns and runs, many planets, moons, star systems, and in a draconian manner. And our main character has retired, has left this imperial regime, turned her back on this, and is now living on a farming moon, and lives amongst these people that are a collective species, collective culture. And she enjoys herself there, and she's been embraced by them, despite the fact that the people here don't know about her background. And that is, we see this in gaming plenty of times, right? The character who's basically a badass, but is hiding amongst the normies. We see this in classic D20 gaming, where you have character levels, and all the rest of the normies are like 0 level humans. This person's a badass, but they've decided to retire, and we can describe this as a classic line from a movie. Every time I try to get out, they keep pulling me back in, right? And yeah, exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. Drew says Rebel Moon is 7 Samurai in Star Wars, but lacking the depth of either, but only there for empty visuals. Yes, very much so. Like, for example, we have our main character, our female protagonist, and the Imperium, Empire, hegemony comes to the moon because their troops need to be fed, and threats are ensued, and of course these peaceful people are harmed, lethally wiped out and whatnot, and our character can't turn her back on the threats that this Imperium, and so she becomes a rebel. And now she realizes that she must recruit other rebels, because running is not going to be not good enough. We need to turn around and strike back. And so she goes about trying to recruit many people who are also rebels, disparate individuals who have been harmed or oppressed by this evil regime, and go to collect them. Unfortunately, in the story, they all seem to have the exact same personality. She goes to recruit them. There's a little bit of action, maybe to recruit these individuals. And once they're recruited, apparently their personalities subside into the background because they stop talking or interacting either with her or anyone else in the scenes. And so we never get a chance to figure out some of their background or personalities, their beliefs, their hesitations, why they're desiring to join this enterprise, and such. So yeah. and yes, like Shit's Lord says, and YouTube might ding me for even saying the word, so you can read that on the screen. Yes, it's very, very much like that, including the jackboots, the straps, the I don't know what those pants are called that are puffy along the thigh that people wear. I don't know what they're called, but the military caps and all that kind of stuff. Yes. Oh, thank you there, N King. You're so fun. That's very kind of you. So Rebel King, uh, sorry about the non sequitur. It was a little segue there. Thank you, N King, for mentioning that. Rebel Moon is essentially many of the stories of disparate characters that want to fight against the man, the larger Imperium. They're scattered amongst the stars, and one of the characters goes around, and more of the characters go around, and they begin recruiting, and we get to see a little bit of a montage of how badass some of these characters are. Now, for tabletop role-playing games, this is perfect setup for introduction of your character, right? And sometimes one of the horrible things in role-playing games is that, dare I say, we don't start close enough to the door to enter into the dungeon. What I mean by that is we really need to take use of in media res, which is like in filmmaking, it's enter in late, get out early. In other words, Rebel King. Yeah, Rebel King. Now I have a name for a scenario. I actually thought about that. I was like, Rebel King. What kind of story could you tell about that? Which technically fits into this tabletop role-playing thing of Rebel Moon, right? Maybe one or more of the player characters is a noble and has to be set upon the throne, or our characters have been running. And one of the great ways about having a strong start, stealing this from Sly Flourish, a strong start for your tabletop role-playing experience is try not to ask too many extremely open-ended questions, such as one horrible open-ended question in science fiction is, what planet are you on and what are you doing? Because you're going to get an answer that's just like, now you have people scattered all across the cosmos, and you're going to have to figure out how to get them back together. And don't let a player make a character that doesn't even want to be in the adventure in the first place. No. You cut that all out. What you do is you say, hey, listen, all of you have gathered together already as a small rebellion against a larger force. You tell me why you joined that cause. You can even get even closer to the front door of the adventure by saying you're all on a starship headed towards, said location to do battle with, or to hide, or say right up front, set up the situation. All of you are fleeing the decimation of I don't know, the third moon from this planet of blah blah blah, right? And for an Obsidian Star, you very easily go, you've just spaced away from Deimos, one of two moons orbiting Mars. Even in the viewer, you can see the I don't know, dropped nukes or something like that were dropped along the surface of Deimos, literally trying to wipe you and your rebellion out. But it's only you as player characters. All of you tell me why you have joined and what your intentions are by, I don't know, taking out this corporation or paper nation that has risen or something of that nature, right? So giving some context so that players can decide why they are involved in this thing in the first place. We often see this in fantasy where, hey, all of you have been arrested in a dungeon. You're literally behind bars. Tell me why your character is there. So, yeah, Shai says, yes, space Nazis have been done to death. They should make one where the anti-government libertarians take over the galaxy. Yeah, and leave everybody alone, and the authoritarian rebels have to stop them. That's pretty funny. Although, despite the sarcasm, you could play it where the player characters are the authoritarians because the cosmos is too chaotic, which, if you wanted to play that, say, for example, in this Obsidian Star, which is our own solar system, maybe the governmental regulations, as it were, are so scattered, like not even like Mars. Maybe there's 15 different governments, all or organizational residents of the different habitats are all at each other's throat, and the players themselves are establishing order. We talked about this before about Easterns and Westerns versus Northerns and Southerns in terms of storytelling. And so, if we want to use classic law and chaos, and this still works, this idea of stealing from Rebel Moon, it still works. Maybe the player characters are all members or have skills of leadership, investigation, some kind of authoritarian basis. Maybe they used to be members of a intergalactic governing body that created a utopia that has already devolved into something and shattered, and now all the player characters must get back together again and go, we need to instill order. And we often see this in post-apocalyptic stories where governments have fallen, and the ones to bring order and bring peace and prosperity are our protagonists. So I hear the sarcasm, but we could still use that for tabletop role-playing games. Now, yeah, Shitlord says, yeah, the Space Senate is chaotic neutral, and you have to beat some law into them with your laser guns. Yeah, exactly. And listen, it may not be, this Space Senate might be like a kleptocracy. Is that, what is it? Is it kleptocracy? I think it's kleptocracy. A government of thieves and corruption and things of that nature. Also, if I can actually pull this back towards the heroine's labyrinth, we've got the hero's journey, heroine's labyrinth. There may be a reset, right? Like, for example, we may have a nominal government, but it really isn't a government. It's like a kleptocracy. It's turning into a totalitarian regime. It's basically a bunch of people that are corrupt, and the players may have to navigate it back to the mean. Navigate everyone back to the middle, where they go, listen, we're gonna excise all the extraneous individuals. And we see this in modern procedural shows, political, police, law, medical, rescue shows, where it's not destroying the police department, it's getting rid of the dirty cops. It's not destroying the legal system, it's focusing on the law and justice and slicing off the corrupt pieces and stuff. Shitlord says, yeah, kleptocracy is governance. Yeah, we have a bunch of names for governments around our world. Many of them kind of fall into kleptocracies if we want to be honest with ourselves, right? And so, yeah, player characters could be members of that regime to bring order. But let's go back to Rebel Moon. Another great thing about that we can steal from Rebel Moon is introducing ourselves to player agency in terms of creating locations, exotic locations, NPCs, creatures, cultures, by having the players be introduced from where they're at. So, for example, in Rebel Moon, as our main character, I don't even remember her name, it's not important. We're introduced to where she's at on this moon. And so each player character could come from a place where the player says, okay, well, my character isn't part of this Imperium. My character resides with this farming community. And so then me, as the game master or the spiral or storyteller or whatever, can say, well, tell me what it's like. What's their language? What's their culture like? What kind of animals are there? Maybe, just give a little sprinkle of flavor for this meal that we're going to eat when we do our role playing. And so each character, one character can come from the seedy underworld of a moon covered with a whole city, and another character comes from a mountainous region where they literally train griffins and things like that. Yeah, Jude's like, back to the middle. Yeah, no, thank you. I'll take it to the radical left. Exactly. And again, that may be a reason why a player character wants to be part of this regime. I mean, heck, despite an Imperium or a kleptocracy, maybe one of the third worst governments is one that doesn't do anything. That it's so middle line that nothing gets done, which means everyone's suffering under the fact that under the effect that um, it's a bureaucracy that takes not just days or weeks or months, it's years, dozens of years just to get something done, and people are starving, and services are not given to the people, things like that. Food isn't given from one place to another, simply because the bureaucracies are all they're all at each other's throats. If we can even go back to the other day, yesterday, we're talking about Dune 2 and the great houses. And in Dune, the different houses kind of have their specialties, whether it's transportation or whether it's military might or communications or things of that nature. And so maybe the players just basically have to get the government that exists, just get it started, because it's just ground to a halt or something. Here, way to bring topical present-day politics in your brilliant sci-fi setting. Oh, thanks. I don't know how brilliant it. Well, it's brilliant because you guys are part of it. But yeah, your present-day kleptocracies. Oh, horrible. It's horrible. Yeah, shitlords like, yeah, government that doesn't do anything. I thought Obsidian was supposed to be realistic, but it wasn't heaven you can go to. Maybe there is a reason for for incorporating some real world governance. Oh man, I mean, I don't know, the kleptocracy part of it's still in my head, because how many times here in the States have we known about money funded that's been earmarked for a special project, and all of a sudden the money disappears and everyone's looking around like, what the hell happened? Yeah, and all the politicos are their pockets stuffed. I don't know what you mean. Anyway, but yes, so having the players themselves introduce locales, factions, NPCs, and maybe a couple of exotic things like weird, strange powers, or a history. For example, there is a history of robots that exist in Rebel Moon that were known to be pacifist and were non-violent. Although in the movie, our robot blows someone's head away pretty succinctly. Having these elements introduced into the world, like using what's the game, Microscope. It's the world building role playing game, Microscope. But you really don't even need to play Microscope. You can just say, hey guys, give me a person or people, give me a place or location, give me a thing like a technology, a monument, a device, an artifact, or something like that, and then take that and make a soup out of it, and then you add that into the world, and that will get your players really engaged in being invested in the world that they're in, especially if it's science fiction. And if the players can go back there, like for example, maybe one player makes a notorious cantina filled with scum and villainy that only the most notorious criminals go to, and you go, okay, maybe this is a hole in the wall, but only those who really know that this is a place to be. And you add that into your world, and you go, I didn't think of that. And maybe it's the 15th moon around Saturn, or maybe it's a hab in the southern hemisphere of Mars, or maybe it's a rotating space habitat around Terra, or something like that. So having the players be invested in it. Also, during this introduction, we can get an idea of player character capabilities. Like, how does your character solve a problem? And then you can describe using a couple of lines. Don't get too deep into it, but maybe the player describes themselves in a precarious situation and describes how they got out of it. So if all the players are like badass assassins, introduce your character and tell me how you assassinated this, child trafficker or something. And the next player, like, okay, now for your character, tell me how you assassinated a politician that stole the life savings of a local community or something. Yeah, money earmarked to pay court costs for space senators when they get sued for virtual yeah, sexual harassment. Yeah, isn't that always like ironic? It's like, wait a minute, so you stole money and yet you get to use the money to defend yourself against the deviant behavior that you have, which is the reason why we're trying to kick you out of government service in the first place. Wait a minute, that doesn't how does that make any sense? Yeah, the hundreds of millions of dollars that I stole, I get to use that to defend myself. uh, or I have my own private island where politicians and famous people can go to engage in debauchery. Yeah, but we'll never expose that list and things like that because everyone else is looking at each other like, I'm not going to expose that list unless you expose it. Anyway, whew. And the player characters might be involved in that kind of thing, and we can also find out like we can create some pro action instead of reaction. So the reaction would be players escaping from the Imperium, and I'm calling it the Imperium. I mean, it's Imperium, Empire, hegemony, whatever you like, the overriding totalitarian government. We can also borrow from any kind of book series or role-playing games or whatever, but yeah, kind of. We can also introduce the players to the types of dangers that they will be up against. So this might just be a way for us to, if it's a new game system, to figure out how to roll some dice, and also introduce the players to like what kind of dangers. Like, are there automated robots that are remote controlled from a orbiting battle platform, or are there cyborg soldiers that have been recruited and given up their humanity to go after the player characters? Or maybe they are humans that have supplanted their personalities and operate as a hive mind. Or the enemy are roided out soldiers that have backpacks full of nanotech and drugs that allow them to physically transform into bestial monsters or something. Maybe the players don't know what kind of enemies they're against, and this might be a good way to introduce them against those enemies. And unfortunately, we can, dare I say, we can fridge some NPCs so that the player characters can see what kind of enemies they're against without even having to roll dice. We see this lots of times in movies and television where the bad guy takes out yeah, Roger, where the bad guy starts taking out NPCs, maybe even some NPCs we don't like, and the players get to see what kind of dangers they're against. So are there like hover tanks that have long range accuracy that can take out our friendly allies? Or are they shape-changing spies that are cyborgs underneath their thick skins that can transform, and they've infiltrated themselves and the player characters don't know who to trust? So this is just me pulling one or all of the above could be stolen and used as weapons in the Imperium, and the player characters may be like, oh, they're using spies, so we don't know if they're shape changers. Oh, they're also using, I don't know, orbital platforms to launch drop ships that will be reinforcements when we go to run for it in these habitat city states or something like that. And that might be a good way to introduce things. Now, the Rebel Moon itself is a part 1, so we do get ourselves, we have our jackbooted, main character, introduction that gets to, chew the scenery while terrorizing our innocent NPCs. That may be also a great way to introduce one or more NPCs that are our adversaries and get to know their personalities. And as we're game masters, we got to have ourselves some role-playing opportunities as well. So now one of the dangers of that is introducing one or more that are easy to kill, especially from like a distance, because player characters, they're they're going to like want to roll initiative and get into the conflict. But I will give you some options on how to both have the players come head to head with our big bad evil guy and yet not have them murder killed immediately, because science fiction is really good with being able to do that. So Shitlord says, isn't Rebel Moon like a private moon? I'm not sure if it's private. I think it's supposedly on the edge of the Imperium that is introduced in, I think it's called the Motherland or the Fatherland. And they are forced to feed the military against their wishes, because the people there would starve. Drew says, yeah, bricks full of stolen goods. yeah, bricks the Schrodinger's box full of stuff in Obsidian Star. Yeah, oh yeah. Shai says it's a secret rebel base where the valiant space defend us from the totalitarian tyranny of the independents who have been leaving the galaxy alone for too long. Being the bad guys, yeah. Well, you know, we could talk about maybe one day we'll talk about evil campaigns, which, you know, evil game players that want to play evil characters. Actually, we have examples of that in many role-playing games. We won't get into it, but I'll say Blades in the Dark of Cyberpunk already exists as evil campaign settings. So, well, we can get into that. Drew says, my NPCs can't be killed. I don't give them stats. You shouldn't say that out loud. Okay. Yeah, so they're more powerful than gods. Not necessarily. So, science fiction gives us plenty of options to introduce our bad guys to have a confrontation, so the players can really be like, you know what, I'm gonna kill you, right? And allow us to have that interaction without the player characters literally rolling initiative and blowing their brains out. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we have excellent science fiction communication, holograms, recordings, tight beam laser. So any type of on-screen holographic communication can happen between our player characters and our bad guy. Now, that interaction doesn't even need to be direct. Player characters could be hiding because, you know, they're sneaky. They like to hide in the shadows, and they could see this interaction with our bad guy from a distance, talking to their agents that are looking, you know, guardians or whatever, or bounty hunters or whatever, looking for our player characters, and they see the holograms of one or more of our bad guys. Now, one thing that really I would love to do is, my go-to is to introduce the lieutenants first. So the lieutenants are like the Darth Mauls and the Vaders, where you don't get to see the Emperor yet. You see the lieutenants. And lieutenants, listen, we can throw in dozens of lieutenants, give them some great personality, some quirks, allow us game masters to role play some of their weaknesses, whether it's pride or jealousy or they're just mercenary, they're in for the money, whether they have plans to supplant our larger, bigger, big bad evil guy. And so communications is always a great one. Another one is like the remote control hive mind kind of thing, where our bad guy, whether it's a lieutenant or someone above them, takes over the mouths, the eyes, the body, the mechanisms that confront the player characters, and the player characters can go ham, you know, hard as a mofo on robots or NPCs and adversaries. And, you know, just before the robot head, you know, falls off the body as the player characters blast in the smithereens, the bad guys are, ha ha ha, I'll be back later, you know, and the eyes, you know, turn off or something. So that's another great way to do it. Lastly, we have things like cloning. In Obsidian Star, we have zippers and jackets, and the ability to beam copies of yourself across our inner solar system. So our big bad guy could literally be there in the physical form, get blown away, but guess what? they beamed their consciousness away, or it's known that they have made copies of themselves because they're just big old narcissists, and the player characters haven't permanently killed our bad guy. Yeah. Oh yes, yeah. No, they can do exactly what the narrative requires. Drew talking about the NPCs. Yeah, and Shice is bringing up, yeah, gods have stats though in D&D. Yep, deities and demigods, statting them out. Yeah, if you can stat it, you can kill it. Drew says, in my system, player characters have no stats either. Only traits that tell about who they are, not about their capabilities. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I am fed up with the competency porn that most TTRPG systems are going for. Yes, and there now that's a type of that is a type of niche medium that we have. Competency, like The Martian, I would dare say Predator, Mission Impossible. Shai says that, yeah, that's what Incompetech implants are for. Incompetech. It's funny. But yes, that is a thing. That is a real thing. And competency is what it's been described, storytelling, it's been described as ABC 1, 2, 3 storytelling. So you're introduced with a character that has a skill with A, B, and C, and the story requires them to match A, B, C with the numbers 1, 2, 3. Unfortunately, 1, 2, 3 gets put out of order, and now A, B, C must be used. A must be used with 2, B must be used with 3, C must be used with 1. If you understand what I mean by that. So it's A. I am very sorry for not giving credit to the podcast that talked about this online, and it's probably been 3 or 4 years since I've heard it. But yeah, it's called ABC 1, 2, 3 storytelling for competency. It Ray needs some Competech upgrades. Listen, as a Mary Sue character, listen, let's not pick with Ray. I just saw Dune 2. Paul Atreides Maldeep. That's a Mary Sue character. Let's not listen. Let's not get it twisted. It's a very common trope. But yes, that is the idea. Also, with talking about an overabundance of competency, the Rebel Moon, which this is just my specific opinion, it did not have very good execution. We do get to see an overabundance of competency from our characters. They're all badass, battle-hardened individuals that are gathered together to accomplish a goal, to fight against the Imperium. And I'm calling it Imperium just because it's a placeholder name. I guess you could put in Empire or Hegemony as well. Yeah, 5-year-old Anakin was way worse of a Mary Sue than Rey. Yeah, and listen, there are ways to tell appropriate stories with characters who have a preponderance of competency, and you start the story out by misplacing the ABC with the 1, 2, 3. So an example would be a character has excellent skill, A, B, and C skill, but we understand that their skill is misaligned with their lifestyle. So maybe the social structures where they live don't allow them to express their competency. Maybe there are guilts, internal structures, guilt, duty, trauma that prevents our character from using their ABC skills. That we know they're badass, but they must fight against and overcome their own. John Wick is a perfect example of this. John Wick has is a perfectionist in his ABC skills, but because of the circumstances, wife died, retired from out of being an assassin, and so this character cannot express their competency until the restraints are removed. and then now they're able to match up ABC with 1, 2, 3. So yeah, I know I'm describing it horribly in the podcast that I listen to, but it makes sense. It's like sticking the pegs don't fit in the proper holes, and you match up the pegs with the holes in order to make that character express their pure competency. Or you go, the pegs don't fit, and we're going to prove this character is so competent by making sure that they are able to recontextualize their particular skills. So an example would be in Aliens. Our main character Ripley utilizes the fragile power, which is the young girl Newt, who knows her way through all the tunnels and such, and utilizes her to help the space marines escape, right? And whereas the other space marines, their skills are incompatible with the aliens, Ripley realizes, no, I have a skill here, and one of those is motherhood, and she utilizes the young girl and realizes that she has the fragile power. The fragile power using the heroine's Labyrinth as a thing. Also, talking about hero's journey and heroine's Labyrinth, and talking about a Rebel Moon. One thing that sometimes I feel like is underserved in role-playing games is making it very personal. So while our characters may be scattered amongst the stars and planets and habitats and moons, and they are pulled into this greater conflict, we can say, or we can introduce characters that, no, you're not just a character on the run. You're on the run from a specific individual who knows you, might even be a sibling or a star-crossed lover, or maybe a player character maybe they trained a badass cadre of warriors, and there's now a gap, and now the master becomes the hunted, as they are hunted by the badass laser touting, mono-bladed warriors that are now after the player character. Like, we can make this specific to the player characters. Their names are called out by our bad guys. The communities that the player characters navigate through, they are known by name in these communities, whether the player character's appearance is a good thing, they're like a savior, or it's a bad thing where their presence means that they're bringing very many dangers. And so incorporating backstory and specificity, calling out someone's specific name, player characters that recognize specific individuals that have been recruited onto the bad guy's side or are being threatened. The bad guys are threatening specific individuals that are there. And then we can also have not red herrings, what's the term? Twists, turns, turncoats, things like that. Maybe a player character is like, oh, my sibling has always been on the side of the bad guys and I hate them. And then come to find out that really they've been undercover this entire time and you didn't realize it. And for years you thought your sibling was a hated person, but now you're like, I'm going to save their life because they sacrificed our bond together, because now I realize they were trying to keep me safe on this distant moon, but now I'm coming to join them and things like that. So very much. Also, when our player characters are introduced to this grand galactic overriding Imperium empire and they're trying to take it down, we also can incorporate to give across to the players the win-loss, what it takes to win and lose. So an example may be that we can state in front of the player characters, both in-game and out-of-game, hey guys, listen, the Imperium controls 3 moons, using the term from Rebel Moon. They control 3 moons, which, I don't know, is the engine of the power of this Imperium. One moon is their where they manufacture all of their weaponry and such. The second moon is the seat of power of all the government, where all the highest levels of government reside here from all the distant houses. And the third moon is the one that feeds the population. This is the one that feeds them with food and entertainment and such, and keeps people pacified. If you could take out at least 2 of these 3 things, that will destabilize the empire. Like, give the players an actual physical, like, narrative goal that they can focus on, so that it's not this generalized pie in the sky. Oh, you need to take down the empire generally by fighting back against this, who knows how many, in a really general. You really don't want to do that. And this can be the rule of 3 can be used for this. So for an example, using your player characters as feedback, the players may come up with ideas as to how to take out the empire. The first idea, okay, maybe that's not it. Second idea, maybe that's not it. But if they come up with a really good third idea, don't go further than that. Just agree with them and go, yes, that is exactly how to destabilize them, right? But seriously, can't there can only be bad guys? Like in, I don't know what that acronym is. First thing came to mind was God of War. I don't know the acronym. Another thing, although you do bring up something, Lords, you do bring up the fact that, like, how intricate of how black, white, and or gray do you want this rebel moon? Oh, Game of Thrones. Okay, yeah. How black, white, and gray do you want this story to be? So, for example, your players might be on the outskirts of this galactic empire. For example, in Obsidian Star, it's our own solar system, and so maybe the players are in the most distant parts of the solar system: Uranus, Neptune, the Kuiper Belt, with Pluto and Charon being like kind of the point of that. Maybe they're in a distant place. Maybe they're in the asteroid belt or something. You've told the player characters you're in the distance. As they coalesce into an organized group to go up against whatever evil regime there is, letting them know, is everybody that's not a player a bad guy, or is there some gray into it, or are they all bad guys? It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Or is it more like Blade in the Blade movies, where sure, all the vampires are bad, it's just that I'm going after a specific clan or group for right now, but guess what, all you guys are going to be in danger at some point. We're just going to hyper focus on these. So that can come up in the story. For example, if your science fiction realm is like Game of Thrones, let the players know, listen, you're not going to take out all the sci-fi houses. That's not going to happen. Now, you don't have to trust them all, because everybody's got machinations, because you guys are doing the same intricacies and machinations as well. But just rest assured, you can't take everyone out. Or on the other hand, you may say, guess what? You guys are big damn heroes. Everybody else is a bad guy. You can throat punch anybody as you wish, because they're all bad, and eventually you're going to hop, jump, and skip your way through all of the bad guy factions until you take them all down and, I don't know, place someone on the throne or reinstitute a new utopia or something like that. So yeah. Yeah, Uranus has only bad guys. One could say it is the place where the arseholes meet. That is true. Which would be hilarious, but actually it might be real true. You're like, yeah, your anus is where the assholes meet. Yeah. And we're gonna take you down. Blow you away like a fart in the wind. Hey, you give out player points for every player that comes up with a really cool snideish remark that deals with scatological humor. All right, bad guy, I'm gonna make you shit your pants. Right? Then blow the heat off the gun. I just turned you into a skid mark. Oh no. Oh man. Sorry. Too many scatological humor one-liners just came into my head, unfortunately. Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna make the bad guy drink lemonade and chocolate, but it's not lemonade or chocolate. Man. I'm gonna take this laser rifle and put it in through the out hole. Oh man. When you come and get up against my character, I'm gonna make you feel like you ate gas station sushi. Twice. Anyway, so another thing that kind of happened in Rebel Moon was we get to see some exotic locations. Now, you guys know that I am the self-appointed third pillarist of the tabletop role-playing community, and yet no one has deposed me from my dictatorial position. You know, I'm pretty good at being this way. Location. The absolute sweet spot to me in science fiction is not just who you throat punch, but where. And a little bit of this was done in Rebel Moon, but we love to have ourselves some great exotic, dynamic locations. Anon Alderlin, hey, hi there. More like snide remarks. Am I right? Yeah. Snyder. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for being here. I don't know if you've been here before, but you're always welcome. All of you are always welcome. But so science fiction gives us plenty of opportunities to have dynamic locations. So first of all, in science fiction, we get gravity. We love to play with some gravity, light gravity, zero gravity, floating platforms, anything that gives us height, space, dynamics when it comes to mass, weight, density, and volume. So a zero gravity battle in a storage location where a warehousing where you have containers moving around in space and the PCs get crushed by it is always amazing. So we do have ourselves plenty of height and distance, whether you're on the skin of a habitat or re-entering an atmosphere or flying with a plasma fueled backpacks or anything like that, fighting on the skin of a dirigible. Lots of height and distances. Also with science fiction, we have plenty of exotic locations, frozen worlds, volcanic worlds, frozen volcanic moons that we have here in our own solar system, different Mercury where at the night side of Mercury that's frozen solid, and the day side of Mercury that's blasted by the sun, which I believe it is the sun from the surface of Mercury is 13 times the size of the sun seen from Earth, if I'm not mistaken. Drew says, you are lucky that external exploration is not my thing, but only internal exploration of the human condition. Otherwise, the Obsidian King would be dethroned a long time ago. Now internal exploration is something that is it's an atrophied muscle for mechanisms inside of tabletop role-playing games, and often unsung. It's often an unsung thing as well. And so there are those explorations, whether in science fiction we can emulate internal exploration with flashbacks, VR worlds, mindscapes, dream sequences, psychic planes of astral projection, alien monoliths that take us into micro realms, where minutes, days, weeks, months, years, centuries pass, but it's only moments since we touched the monoliths. So science fiction gives us plenty of exotic places to be. Dynamically, we also have, because of technology, we also can ruin the very man-made places that we have. So not only do we have natural environments like mile high and mile deep crevices, or kilometers high and kilometers deep crevices on Mars and other moons, but we also have things where we have space habitats that can collapse. We have starships. We have places that shift and change because of their destruction or mechanisms, like a factory or whatever, where players can have run and gun battles where the environment starts to shift and change around the player characters. So it's not just punching people in the throat that's when it gets boring. It's also the locations around them. Side note, the cool name goes here. Cool name tabletop role-playing game. And I'm one of the one of the contributing designers to it. May be one of the first, if not only, role-playing game where every single thing in the game has, you can assign a hit point mechanism in the game, and every skill capability the characters have the ability to solve through the use of reducing the hit point structure of the trouble that's given to you. Of course, in Obsidian Star, it works the exact same way with conundrums. In Cool Name RPG, I introduced them to that same design mechanism as well. So, which is also another free tabletop role-playing game, but it's made with like Robin Laws and Kenneth Haidt and some other people. So, if you're interested, let's see if we can. Cool Name RPG. I'm gonna find it. There's the Kickstarter. There's here Kickstarter. Okay. I'm just gonna copy the link and put it here if you'd like to find out what that's about. This is also one of the reasons why it's difficult for me to take part in some things, because I'm also writing for some another place as well. Let's see. That was from January 16, but RPG Pub. All right, I'll put this here as well. This is an old thread, but I'll copy this and put this in the link in the chat as well. Sorry about the hard seg. Yeah. And I forgot about this one. Let's copy. I think this, and this is the Kickstarter page, which should be able to take you to is it Mechanical Muse? Yeah, it's Mechanical Muse. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Hard segue back to Rebel Moon. While the execution of the Netflix series, at least aired on Netflix here in the States, while the hard execution of that, the execution of that might not have been done well, as some people say. Honestly, when I was watching it, I was like, you know what? This actually reminds me of a role-playing game. Let's be honest. Our role-playing experiences are the equivalent of us writing a script for an adventure series, first draft. Basically, that's what role-playing is. So when people have like issues with a role-playing session that wasn't perfect, of course it wasn't. Yes, in our own head canon, we may picture it cinematically in the things that happen in it, but this is basically, there is no perfect role-playing session that would perfectly mimic what a movie or a graphic novel or television show or anime series would be like first draft. You know, now, could you take a role-playing session and use it as an outline, a framework, and then run it past like 6 writers and then take a couple of months or even years to flesh it out? Yeah, sure. But role-playing sessions, don't get it twisted. This is a first pass. This is literally like trying to write a script first pass with actors and a director first pass. Yeah, Yankee says, now I imagine all plot holes as bad dice rolls. Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just, it's, uh, there would be, imagine going to a movie theater to watch a movie and the movie is being made in real time. Come on, that's not possible. Now, improv, there are people who love improv acting, and that's, again, improv acting and on stage live improv is very much like a first pass draft of a role-playing session if you were to film it and give it some dialogue and things like that, right? That's exactly what role-playing is. So don't kick yourself if you think something's bad. But I say that because for how Rebel Moon was executed, this is just me, it feels like a first, maybe second or third pass. Didn't really drill down to get rid of the plot holes, the bad dialogue, the info dumping, the lack of not showing but telling, those kind of things. And so, but the good thing about Rebel Moon for doing that is you don't have to go far much better than how it was executed for your own role-playing session, right? Like if Rebel Moon was a first-time role-playing session, I go bravo, excellent, right? Like literally, it's pretty excellent. So yeah, we can steal from it, and again, what a great way to use something that we, whether we want to use some of the locations in this series of Rebel Moon, whether we want to use some of the overacting or underacting for some of the NPCs that are used in this series, even trying to, I even can imagine in Rebel Moon that some of the things that were introduced in it were like non sequitur, unrelated, game master, like, I don't know how this is going to fit, but maybe we'll come back to it later. Like, for example, they introduced a griffin and never went back to it. They introduced a robot with a background about they were enslaved and there's a, like, they're pacifists now, and never went back to it. There was a humanoid Drider woman that was introduced in this thing, and why? I don't know. There was a badass woman with twin short sword laser blades, and I'm not sure whether those laser blades are like rare or they're normally amongst this clan, or they are assassin weapons normally wielded by only experts on this war. I don't know. So there were lots of things introduced in Rebel Moon, and just uncertain as to like where it goes. And honestly, it actually is kind of cool in a role-playing sense. Like, okay, maybe, just maybe, in session 3, we're going to go back to the moon in which the farmer character that was kind of indentured servitude, enslaved, ends up gets his freedom by taming a griffin. Maybe we go back to that, and each player is given a griffin, and we decide to have a flying acrobatic chase scene in the aerial locations of the skyscraping mountains or something or whatever. Yeah. A nonsense. Yeah, Snyder is the Michael Bay of narrative elements. Yeah. Michael Bay, who to me he directs like an 11-year-old boy that's like in his room with toys and stuff. And it's like you have all your action figures around, and like and your parents have spent like a couple $1,000s on like your Legos and like GI Joes and Transformers. He's like, okay, so what happens in this scene is he goes over here and he goes boom, 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 and then this guy goes shoo, and then his girlfriend's over here and she's like, ooh, you're so, and they smooch, and then just reminds me of a little kid when he directs. Yeah, no nuance, just explosion, slow motion run, rub body oil on everyone's faces, Scantily clad. Yeah. Explosions versus expositions. Yep. So this is how we do things. Also, I will say that exposition dumping in Rebel Moon was a problem. Terrible execution. And what you really don't want to do is lore dump. Don't lore dump. So one tool for that, of course, is putting all that work on your players. Listen, your character is from a distant moon. Go for it. You describe what it looks like and what the behaviors are. Give and put a limitation on it. Give me 3 to 5 bullet points. Each bullet point is no more than 3 sentences. Like, put a hard limit on that shit, because some players will come back with an 8-page dissertation with no line spacing, double-sided, and you just be rolling your eyes like, fuck, I can't incorporate none of this bullshit. Why did they give me a griffin in my sci-fi game? You know what I mean? Like, that's what it reminds me of. Sorry. With Rebel Moon, it's like, who put griffins in here? What? I don't know. Whatever. Maybe one character was like, I want to play a robot, and you just roll your eyes like, I don't even have rules for this. You're like, well, I'm not going to be able to get into the second game, so let me just play a robot. And you go, fine, you can play a robot. Damn it. But anyway, so instead of the lore dumping, you want to show not tell. Now, what's hilarious about show not tell in terms of tabletop role-playing games is that sometimes you have to tell to show, if that makes sense. So we have to use our words to describe a thing, which sounds like lore dumping. But in other words, when we describe lore, we should have it become very interactive. So don't have the players sitting still while you're giving lore. Lore should be interactive. They should be able to touch, feel, sense, run from, run into, things like that. So if you need to give lore about locations, have this lore given to them while they are traveling, while NPCs are in the middle of a gunfight, while the PCs are repairing something, while they're doing one thing, dump some lore on them while they're doing something else. How do you dump lore in the middle of a gunfight? Well, first of all, very quickly, because we're going to get out of here pretty soon. Really to do lore dumping during action after initiative is rolled, is having all of the NPCs discuss things in the midst of battle. For example, an NPC ducks their head behind cover and says something to the effect of, they're using cryo guns from the Third War. What the hell does that even mean, right? But you just dump some information out there that answers a question the players didn't even ask. What the hell's a cryo gun? And what happened in the Third War? I don't remember some Third War. And then the players may want to ask a question, and they go, what's a cryo gun? Well, you describe like ice, it gets sprayed across the cover, and when you look up, you see, icicles and shards, and your breath coalesces into frost in front of your mouth, and you're like, oh, they're using cryo guns. Okay, I get it. Things like that. So you can have PCs and NPCs say things. Maybe there's mistaken identity. Maybe the Imperium is like, rebels, come out of your hiding. We have your leader, Darkon Exogen, or something like that. And the PCs are like, I don't know who Darkon Exogen is, right? And Darkon Exogen has given up where you are. And you're like, you PCs yell over the frozen covers, like, we don't know who that is. And Imperium is like, tells Darkon right there in front of player characters, you lied to us. These aren't the rebels we're looking for, right? We're going to give you to a count of 3. And Darkon's like, no, that is them. Please come save me. Something like that. So you can have role playing in the middle of combat. And I think sometimes we tend not to even default to that. So guys, thank you very much for spending your valuable time here. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow we are going to talk about surrogates. I suggest doing a Wikipedia search for it. Do a little IMDb search. I don't think you need to watch it. But again, a great premise with a maybe not too good of execution. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you, Anon Adderlin. Thank you very much for being here as a new face amongst everyone else. I really appreciate it. Also, for you spending your valuable time, I hope in your science fiction tabletop role-playing game experience, I can give you back just a little bit of change. Woo, I'm awkward with that. Guys, have a great one. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility.